Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Khalil Doheny, and I'm Director of Content at Digital Niche Agency. Today, we have Sean Jones from QuickLoadz. Sean, how are you doing today?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. And while, we have the audience trickling in, do you want to just give a quick background of yourself and then really what we can expect from today's webinar?
Well, I'm I guess I inventor and CEO of QuickLoadz. The whole thing started out with my construction company, sort of a serial entrepreneur. We were always using we were building like 12 houses one year, and I saw all these trucks and trailers just not getting used. So we thought, well, let's just try shipping to something different, like sea shipping containers. And then we discovered how hard they were to move. And other contractors saw us using sea shipping containers for storage, and so then we started renting them out, and then built a rental company around it. Then the big national mini mobile bought it out, so we had a 5-year non-compete, and we decided we are going to figure out an easy way to move sea shipping containers, and that's how the whole thing started. So
There you go. Awesome. And yeah, this webinar really is for you, the audience, to learn a little bit more about QuickLoadz and learn about the investment opportunity currently happening on Republic. Sean's going to go through a whole presentation that he has planned for you. And then at the end, we're going to have some time for some Q&A. Sean, with that being said, I'm just going to hand the mic back to you. If you want to go ahead and share your screen, and let's start with the presentation.
all right, share screen. Boop. And there we go. That work?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Well, first off, welcome to all our investors and potential investors. I'm going to start with a little housekeeping. I've been repeatedly told that by SEC rules, I'm not allowed to say anything that's not either public or on their public site or elsewhere. The idea being that everybody should have the same access to information. If you have a specific question that isn't addressed, I'd encourage you to post on Republic site so everybody has access. We see anything in presentation that we don't have in the public, we'll do our best to make sure that discussions are put on our post so that everybody has the same info. The next thing is being the inventor, I tend to focus on the product and how it works. I will refrain from my natural tendency to do that because I understand that you guys are investors and you're much more interested in why would anybody want to buy this and not technically how this thing works. Fortunately, we know people want this and the markets are out there. Some markets that we never even thought of. Last is we're doing this from my office, which is right on the factory floor. So it might get a little loud. Hopefully we can do another one of these and sometime I can walk you through the plant and you can see the whole thing. So in short, QuickLoadz is the only company in the world that builds an automated container that can move hundreds of millions of containers, which are the foundation of the world economy. Slide 2, there we go. So 90% of the world's freight travels in sea shipping containers. Hundreds of millions of these things are moving around the globe every year. Everything from your socks to your cell phones has been in one of these. The sea shipping container is a huge revolution where previously cargo used to be loaded by a pallet or a bag or a box at a time into the cargo holds of ships or on trains or on trucks. It was done like this for thousands of years. Of course, this is really slow and there were a lot of losses. It's estimated that 60% of all alcohol shipped back then was lost, and I'm sure it wasn't just by breakage. The idea to put cargo into giant boxes and just move the boxes didn't come up until the 1950s. It seems incredibly obvious now, but back then it was a revolution in freight that lowered the cost of shipping by over 90%. Suddenly, world freight and travel trade became economical for all kinds of things that wasn't before. The problem with sea shipping containers is that to move it, you have to have $1 million crane to put it on, and these special trailers called container chassis. Once it's on that chassis, the freight sits inside 4 feet off the ground and can therefore only be accessed at a loading dock. This creates a huge bottleneck. If you can only move these containers on and off the chassis with $1 million crane, it can only access the contents of that container and all that merchandise once at a loading dock. You've really limited how you can move freights around the world. As a result, 4 out of 5 trailers are sitting somewhere doing nothing, waiting to be loaded or unloaded, which is really wasteful. Just like the invention of the sea shipping container, the solution seems really obvious. Just build a container chassis that can load and unload itself. And that's what QuickLoadz is. QuickLoadz automates the loading and unloading process to the point where the driver never has to leave their seat in the truck to move fully loaded 60,000-pound containers in 3 minutes. The system is safe, it's fast, it's easy, and it works everywhere. Now think about that. Anywhere a truck can go, suddenly an entire container of merchandise can be picked up and moved in 3 minutes. No loading docks, no trucks idling for hours, no drivers waiting for hours. Anywhere a truck can go, an entire container of merchandise can be put on the ground and the contents accessed immediately. No million-dollar cranes. Suddenly, intermodal freight is accessible not just at giant distribution centers and ports, it's available everywhere. Every store, every manufacturer, every farmer on field side, every dock everywhere in the world. It's a huge improvement in the way freight moves. You might say, well, there are moving containers now. How is that being done? Well, this first picture here is a traditional container chassis. And that is what needs that million-dollar crane to put the container on it and a loading dock to unload the contents of the merchandise once it's on there. Now, the second one here is a tow trailer. Now, tow trailers are basically a flat tilting trailer with a winch at the front, and they can pull an empty container most of the way on. But legally, it can only move empty containers because winches don't push. And if you pull the container all the way onto the trailer, the winch can't push it off. Also, by Department of Transportation rules, if the container has anything in it, it has to be secured by those 4 lower corner castings. These guys right there. Winching a 40,000-pound or 40-foot, 9,000-pound empty container onto a trailer is a tricky, it's slow, dangerous job. We have a customer who switched to us after their driver lost an arm when a winch cable broke. Now, this last one here are what are called side lift cranes. Now, side lift cranes can slowly pick up a sea shipping container, and there's an awful lot of weight there, and you've suspended 60,000 pounds 4 feet in the air. So you unfold these cranes, the driver gets out, he puts in his straps and his chains, he does that in front and the back. He slowly picks this thing up, he puts it down, then he folds up his cranes and he retracts his feet and away he goes. Now, side lift cranes have a nice purpose, but if you look at it, it's kind of limited here because if it's windy at all, you sure don't want to do it. If you're not on firm ground, you sure don't want to do it. There's just a lot of things that limit this particular process. But the real downfall to a side lift crane is you can't get to what's inside of that container. So our system is designed so that it works with all the existing freight systems. You can back up to a loading dock, open the doors, get to what's inside. You can drop the container on the ground. But side lift cranes only work from the ground. You can't get inside because there's a crane in the way. So I really like this slide. Most of the time, the product that's looking for investment is a drawing or it's a prototype or something like that. We have been putting units in the hands of customers since 2015. There are hundreds of QuickLoadz trailers out there moving thousands of containers all day, all over the world. And we're still tweaking the product. Just in 2023, we started offering an all-electric system. And when we started offering that, suddenly 90% of our customers ordered it with the all-electric. And there are other tweaks we're doing. We're changing light vendors, wiring harness vendors. There's always something that's coming up that we're tweaking. But we have control of our manufacturing now. And it really makes a huge difference in being able to solve these different problems that come up. We had been using QuickLoadz for a couple of years before working the bugs out before we shipped our first unit to the customers in 2015. And those first units were pretty rough. They were getting built in an old 8,000 square foot retail store. We used to have to take a trailer outside and turn around our neighbor's parking lot and bring it back in order to work on it. We went through a long period of searching for contract manufacturers, and that's that whole long thing in there. But I was at a trade show, and Don Landau, who just great guy, who from scratch in the middle of Arkansas, or middle of Kansas, I mean, he took his idea of a sliding axle trailer and created the Landau Corporation, which is now huge. Anyway, Don was always willing to talk, and he said to me one time, look, you have to own your own manufacturer. Maybe not immediately, maybe in stages, but you have to own it, or you will never get the product you want. So after me messing around for a couple more years, struggling through contract manufacturers, we decided to get serious about manufacturing QuickLoadz ourselves. And I'll skip the struggles and just say that in April of 2023, we were finally in a real manufacturing facility, the new equipment installed, and sure enough, production more than doubled in 2023. We do have a contract manufacturer who makes the basic beds for us in Nebraska, and they're great. But we finally got control of the rest of the manufacturer, and if we have to, we can make the whole unit from beginning to end. So the market's huge. Just look at all the trucks and trailers and sea shipping containers you see everywhere. Now think about how the disruption of the flow of those sea shipping containers paralyzed world trade. Think about COVID. I mean, the containers couldn't move and world trade just got paralyzed. Think about every time something happens. A ship gets caught in the Suez Canal, trade slows down. If it does, if the flow of containers slows, everybody feels it. So right now, intermodal freight is currently confined to locations where you have those giant cranes and loading docks. And that's the only place you can use it, really, because you need that giant crane to put it on the chassis. You need the loading dock to get the stuff out. But that is the bottleneck. Ports and distribution centers are the bottleneck. But just think about if you could pick up a container in 3 minutes without a crane and put it anywhere on the ground, that bottleneck goes away. Everything about freight becomes more efficient. With QuickLoad, suddenly everybody can use intermodal freight. Every business can use a 1/10 cost container warehouses. And these would be flexible warehouses that can be picked up and moved anywhere you need them. You can put containers field side for farmers, on docks for fishermen, move recycled tires straight from the tire shop to the port. Suddenly, boom, everybody can use these shipping containers anywhere they are needed, and all of freight opens up. Companies such as Lowe's and Home Depot can get rid of half of their delivery trucks by staging deliveries in containers days or weeks in advance. QuickLoadz easily doubles the reach of intermodal freight. At the ports and distribution centers, QuickLoadz fits in nicely. Toyota, among others, I should say, already build platforms that move around those ports and distribution centers that a container sits on. But if you put a QuickLoadz on top of those automated platforms, suddenly you've eliminated half the gantry cranes needed at that port, and you can really speed up how things move around both in and outside the port. So I keep hitting on this, but QuickLoadz creates things that have never existed before. I mean, you could have a distribution center just pop up. When all of the containers and their contents are accessible from the ground, suddenly a parking lot can become a distribution center. Amazon could add capacity to existing centers in days during a holiday surge. Emergency supplies can be rapidly distributed anywhere in the world on the most efficient freight network that's ever been created. Containers full of relief supplies can be dropped off in individual neighborhoods because each container is a little mini warehouse to keep those relief supplies safe. So let's talk about big end users. Let's look at the big one end user, Walmart. A typical Walmart has 7 loading docks. 4 are occupied by trailers without trucks, waiting to be loaded or unloaded. The typical wait time for a loading dock at a Walmart is 23 minutes. It takes an unloading crew about 3 hours to unload, and that merchandise doesn't stay in the store. That store space is $100 a square foot. That merchandise, once it's taken out of that truck, is then moved into, transloaded, we call it, into $3 per square foot sea shipping containers. Walmart's very good at math. They're going to occupy $3 space instead of $100 space. You see those sea shipping containers sitting outside of every Walmart everywhere. So every Walmart in thousands of deliveries every day, all over the world, can trade 3 hours of truck time, loading dock time, unloading crew time for 3 minutes. And it isn't just that crew time. A Walmart truck and trailer are a $180,000 investment. If you have that $180,000 investment doing nothing but waiting for 3 hours, then it isn't going to be making very many deliveries. You trade 3 hours for 3 minutes means buying fewer trucks and trailers, lower insurance, licensing, maintenance, fuel. We could save an end user like Walmart billions of dollars a year. So there are more and more companies that are realizing it's better and cheaper to take the product to where the people are, whether it's at a summer festival or out to the beach that year. And containers are perfect for that. We are already building trailers for ghost kitchens, pop-up retail stores, things that go to festivals all the time. Oh, this is one of my favorites. So the US Army has decided that their trucks are out of date and they want to replace the entire fleet. It's called the Common Tactical Truck Program. It is worth an estimated $14 billion. The Common Tactical Truck requirements couldn't fit QuickLoadz better if we'd written the requirements ourselves. My co-founder, Bridget Lair, made a presentation at the CTT Industry Day. And based on that presentation, the US Army made it clear that they wanted it. And they even wanted one of our competitors to, even one of our competitors reached out and told us that TACCOM was talking about us. So we're currently talking to two of the 4 contractors that have been awarded the contract to build a prototype. Obviously, we don't build trucks, so we have to make a deal with the company that's going to be building these trucks for the Army to supply the beds. So how do we fit into the fun future of freight? Everyone's very excited about the emerging self-driving truck, but the truck doesn't move the freight, the trailer does. So what would be better than the self-driving truck? Well, be the self-delivering load. If you took a QuickLoadz and you married that to the self-driving truck, it changes everything. Entire depots and massive amounts of merchandise could be moved from anywhere to anywhere without any human intervention. QuickLoadz is already automated. QuickLoadz is on an off-the-shelf solution that would complete that revolution of freight. So QuickLoadz is an off-the-shelf solution for Amazon, Kroger, any company looking to do robotic delivery. The problem with these robotic delivery is they don't have very much range. So if you have a Kroger 30 miles away, you can't send a robot off to deliver stuff. And Amazon has the same thing. They're looking for neighborhood-sized delivery. Well, a sea shipping container fits perfectly in a parking spot. So you could drop a sea shipping container full of robots or drones, whatever it is that you want to deliver, and then they would come and go out of that container. And when they're done, pick up the empty, drop off another one. We've made a deal with a company called Valkyrie, which is working on drone systems to do just exactly that. So we create an incredibly cheap, easy way to create a neighborhood-sized distribution center, a distribution center that you could swap out in minutes. So what's next? We're working on what we consider the next generation of QuickLoadz, which is a higher volume commercial trailer. It will use our all-electric battery pack, but on top of that, it's also going to use a battery electric drivetrain, which we already have in development. What I would like to do is, rather than sell these trailers, what we'd like to do is we'd like to go ahead and lease them only. So the idea is there could be depots of these trailers that, say, Uber drivers use or Yellow Freight uses or something, so that if a container needs moved, they could just pull up to it, pull up their cell phone, type in a credit card number, take the trailer, make their deliveries, do whatever it is they need to do, come back and drop it off again. And if you look at it that way, then the returns become pretty spectacular on a trailer. We're looking at a 900% return over a 21-year life of the trailer. And we're designing the entire trailer around this model. Most trucks and trailers are designed for a 7-year life because that's the amortization. In other words, the customer who buys it wants 7 years of fairly trouble-free operation. But after that 7 years, the thing could fall apart. They're not really concerned about it. They've sold it off and they've written it off. Well, what we do is we hot dip galvanize every one of our trailers because rust is usually what kills these things. And by doing that, we create something that could last 20 years and change the wear parts, send it right back out into the lease fleet. And one of the reasons you'd want to do that is if you sell a trailer, yes, you make some decent money off of it. But if you have a huge fleet of these things, thousands, tens of thousands, then you have a steady income stream, irregardless if you ever sell another trailer. Here's our team. There's me, I'm the CEO, and I do have a series of businesses, everything from construction, mobile storage, a lot of different exits. My co-founder is also our CFO, and she was actually a research scientist for the USGS and then worked with the Voinovich School. for entrepreneurship here at Ohio University. And she actually wrote a book called Best Business Practices for Startups in Rural, I think the rural United States. Jeremy is our Director of Operations. Phoenix Jones is our VP of Engineering. He's got multiple patents that he holds himself. Jersey is our production manager. He's in charge of the back building. Jordan is now in charge of sales. And we have Emily in marketing. And that's my presentation. Should we do some questions?
Yeah, thank you, Sean, for that wonderful presentation. And right now, it's to get your questions answered. So if anyone in the audience has a question, right now is the time. So we have a question here. So like U-Haul, they are trading about 11.55x annualized last quarter revenue.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Just I don't think it's more of a I don't think it's a question, it's more of a statement. It says,
Okay.
oh, yeah. So like U-Haul, they are trading about 11.55x annualized last quarter revenue.
Okay.
All right. And then another question here, it's can you elaborate on the competitive landscape and what sets QuickLoadz apart from other solutions?
Yeah. We're the only people who make something that can automatically do it. And side lift cranes can move low to sea shipping containers. And it works. Certainly it works. It's much heavier than we are, more expensive than we are, and it's a single use. I'm going to quickly share my screen again here real quick. I'm just going to show you this slide. So if you look at this slide, this is our drop deck version. And one of the things that, since this came out of our construction business, one of the things that we were very concerned about is we didn't want a product that can only do one thing. And so what we did was we built a product that's a sliding axle trailer. It can also automatically unload itself from pallets. It can also move heavy equipment. It can also move palletized items. And so if you look at us versus Hammerlift, which is really the only other product out there that's designed to mobily move low-to-sea shipping containers, if you're not moving a container with a Hammerlift, you have no other use for it, really. And most of those side lift cranes, they're only designed to load or unload from one side. And like I say, they just don't work with things like loading docks, which are a fundamental part of freight. So we feel like we have a pretty big advantage in that we're automated. Our system is so automated that I was standing on stage at a freight festival in Bentonville, Arkansas, and over the internet, I loaded a container that was 800 miles away at our plant here in Athens, Ohio. So I guess if I had to summarize it, I'd say the two biggest things are the fact that we've got multi-use and that we're heavily automated, and nobody else is even close to that.
Awesome. And I'm seeing some questions here around, the projected revenue for 2024. Unfortunately, due to SEC guidelines, we can't discuss financial projections on this webinar. If you do have a question around that, please leave it on the Republic page so everyone has access to that question. And then a question here is how to defend against copycats, particularly in jurisdictions that may not take into account patents.
Yeah, I think you'd be speaking about Asia. We've got patents all over the world and in the US. And I think our product is actually more useful in a lot of ways in the developing world, such as Asia and Africa, because they don't have an infrastructure there. They don't have the giant distribution centers, the loading docks. And when we talk to people in those areas, they're very excited about it. That being said, we have patents in China and Taiwan and a bunch of countries like that, and in Australia, everywhere in the EU, everywhere where they might be making these. In China, despite their past reputation, has actually gotten very good about enforcing foreign patents. I think there's just been enough pressure about it. But in other ways, we can keep a U.S. manufacturer from making the same thing, but the question, what could we really do about it? If somebody started making these things in China and our patents couldn't be enforced, there's only so much you can do about it. I mean, the U.S. market's in the billions, so I would have to say that it's not. It's a simple machine, but it was actually much more difficult to make than you would expect. It was there would be a learning curve for somebody else, basically just stealing it. And the nice thing is in startups especially, a lot of companies stay away from heavy manufacture because it's slower to take off. But on the plus side, the barrier to entry is much, much higher. So you have a really good software idea and 12 other people see it, and they're working away in their basements on it in an hour and a half. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and we just now have the giant facility and everything we need to make it. So.
And then how do warehouses with dock doors access the container if the container has been placed on the ground by the QuickLoadz unit? The ground and dock platforms are not the same height.
Right. So there's two ways there. If you want to just plain old get to the contents of that container and it's on a QuickLoadz, then you can just back up the loading dock. It's loading dock height, it's loading dock compatible. If it's a warehouse that's in the container sitting on the ground and they don't have a way to move it to the loading dock, then yeah, you'd have to go out there with the container or the forklift or whatever and load it that way. So, we work with loading docks. We're very careful about making sure that our loading docks, you could access the contents of the container with a loading dock. But really, I think that the biggest strength is the fact that you could put these things on the ground and just access the contents from the ground level with a forklift.
And then what is the plan to scale manufacturing to meet demand?
Well, one of the reasons I really like our contract manufacturer in Nebraska, and even though we could make the entire unit in our plant now, is that contract manufacturer is fairly large and they've always done a really good job for us. But the thing is if you're a contract manufacturer, you have to rearrange your floor to make something like this. And so what we would do is we would order bed sections, and they could stamp those out and ship a group to us and then use that floor space for something else. But if we got a large order, say for 30 or 40 of exactly the same trailer, we talked to our contract manufacturer and they would be willing to and able to build the entire trailer from start to finish. And so I guess one of the reasons we'd always like to keep them in our as one of our vendors is that it gives us a great deal of flexibility in if we have a large order. I mean, that manufacturer is not going to want to build one of this and two of that. They're just not. They're set up to do the same thing over and over again. Well, we're not in a position yet where we've got an order for 50, 60K super high 40s. But if we did, they were more than willing to make those for us. So we have two ways to scale. One is our own plant, and two, we have a contract manufacturer we're very happy with.
And then are there any plans to expand in the Canada and Mexico markets?
Into what markets?
Canada and Mexico.
We actually sell about 20% of our product into Canada. So there's been quite a bit of interest from Canada. And even with the Canadian dollar weak right now, I think we've shipped like 6 or 7 to them. So there's we've only sold, I think we might have only sold 1 or 2 to Mexico, but yeah, the Canadian market's been pretty good for us.
And then are there plans for further technological advancements or additions to your product offerings?
There is, and it's a big one, but I can't announce it until March. We're going to announce it at a show in March. So.
Okay, and then let's see. How does QuickLoadz plan to engage with key players in the industry, including potential acquisition targets?
Well, geez, I'm not sure I'm allowed to answer this. We are talking to several companies which could be possible acquirers of us. one of the issues that we've run across is a lot of these players. All right, let's just say this one particular player says, "Oh, this product could be absolutely great for the military," but they don't. That particular company doesn't do any commercial. They don't do regular trailers or anything like that. So the downside of them purchasing us is you've really just created something that's going to go for the military, which is nice, but not really. And we keep running across that. We had a company that was heavily into agriculture that had talked to us, but they had no interest in being in freight. They had no interest in these other parts. So I don't know. I would really like to find that potential acquirer, and we're talking to one that would be able to use all these different markets that we're already available for, rather than just, okay, well, we want it for this. So I don't know. I think it's likely that we will get acquired, but finding that right one. And the other problem is a lot of these really big companies, like if you're looking at $1 billion and up company, they're not interested in acquiring startups very much. Usually they want to acquire a company. There's this line called the $5 million EBITDA, where if you're producing $5 million in earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, then they're interested. But if you're not at that point, then they just think, well, we'll wait till you get there. So a lot of the big companies are not terribly interested in startups. They're more interested in acquiring something that's already reasonably large.
What are the main risks that QuickLoadz faces, and how does the company plan to mitigate them?
Inertia is a big problem for us. So one of the things about getting into a really large company is they have a tremendous amount invested in the way they're doing things now. And so inertia is difficult. Fortunately, there's enough smaller mom and pops that seem very interested in using this product and doing well with it, that I think that would get us to that point where we could get through our sales and expand that way. In other words, I guess we don't need a Walmart to get fairly large. Obviously, something like that would greatly accelerate us. But so I feel like there's that inertia that people don't think of things being done this way. So that takes some effort. Oh, all right. So I can't wander too far on this, but let's say one of our customers is United Van Lines. And our pitch to them was, look, if you used QuickLoadz, you could pick up a sea shipping container, drop it in somebody's driveway. They could load it, put their lock on it. You come back by with your truck, pick it up out of their driveway, put it on a train to ship anywhere you want. You could literally move somebody from one side of the plant to the other without your driver getting out of the truck. I mean, and just the savings would be enormous. And they agreed to a certain extent, but they said, well, the problem is we have a proprietary system like pods that we use. And every one of or most of our companies are franchisees. And so would be, even though we think that this would be very useful to us because our pods have to be picked up by a crane and put on a flatbed and move from one part to another, your system will be much easier. There's a lot of inertia there. There's millions of dollars. So I think that's that same inertia feeling that's a little bit difficult to overcome. Now, so what we need to do is we need to find one of these startup moving companies that aren't invested in that, and then eventually they'll put out United Van Lines out of business.
And then
I probably should have said that. So,
what's the manufacturing capacity units per month?
Our current building, we think that the very most that we could pull off in this building would be about 10 a week. Fortunately, the Athens County development group is building an even larger building right next door to us. That's on speculation. They don't have a customer for it yet. And then, so we think that there's already a ready-built facility next to us. But we also have 5 acres here, so we can expand to a fair amount. But really, if you're going to get to that point where you're stamping out 40,000 trailers a year, it's going to have to be much larger. So,
And why go the equity crowdfunding route?
I, I like equity crowdfunding. Um, so I gotta admit, the first time we did the equity crowdfunding, I wasn't terribly thrilled about it, thinking, well, uh, it'd be complicated, this and that. But uh, it actually worked out really well. I was impressed with. I think we had 500 investors in the first one, and I was really impressed with the number of connections that the investors made for us. It just seemed like, well, suddenly we had 500 advocates, and that really helped. And so I was really impressed with it. It's not the only way we're raising funds, but like I say, I was impressed with how well it worked out. I mean, just not just the okay, well, we raised, I think, 385 last time, which is a chunky piece of change, but it was really the fact that you know suddenly there were a lot of people who knew what we did and started telling other people. So I think that's probably one of the biggest strengths of actually crowdfunding is that crowd.
Yeah. And while we begin to wrap here, what would you say, someone who is on that fence of, investing, what would you say are the top 3 to 5 reasons someone should invest into QuickLoadz?
So 90% of everything that's manufactured is in a sea shipping container. So if you look around you, everything has been in a sea shipping container. And we know from the disruptions that we've had that anytime something slows those containers moving around, um, the whole economy suffers. Well, there's one company in the world, QuickLoadz, that has developed an automated way to move those things. I mean, how could you not invest in that? I mean, we have no direct competition. And so it's just like what I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. We won out of, I think, 35,000 applicants. We were one of 15 winners of the Amazon Small Business Grant Awards, and which is a like 0.02% or something. And that was decided by Amazon and Entrepreneur Magazine. And so they looked at us and said, what they're doing is very difficult, but the upside is so enormous. And so we're getting endorsed by things like that. It's I think we've got a really bright future. So, oh, and the product actually exists and is actually in hands of customers. So it's not just an empty promise.
And then if potential acquirers are sector specific, would you be open to do licensing agreements instead of full acquisition?
I'd rather license it. I'd rather keep developing the product and maybe just try to stay commercial and maybe license for military or something. Um, Unfortunately, at least 2 of the companies we've talked to said they're not interested in license. They'd want to just acquire. It's like, well, right. So, but yeah, I think licensing, because that's another interesting thing about licensing is we briefly discussed this. It's sort of like crowd manufacturing. We, we discussed the possibility of taking everything that's complicated and tricky about a QuickLoadz. Let's say the control systems, all the machine parts, and just making those available for general sale so that any trailer manufacturer could buy those parts from us and they could just start, Bob's Trailers that maybe only makes 3,000 trailers a year could suddenly just start making QuickLoadz and selling them. And then we would be selling them the things that they needed in order to do it. So I like the idea of the crowd manufacturing because it's kind of an interesting way to scale and it's not really done. But I think that it could pretty quickly get away from you and that, there's enough people out there that somebody could start copying parts and then how would it'd be very difficult to track as whether or not people are I guess, making a lot more than what they say they're making.
Well, Sean, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with here today?
Um, no, we really appreciate your attention and investment, and I think it'll be big.
Awesome. And yeah, and if wanted to rewatch this whole webinar has been recorded the whole time. And check out the Republic Raise page. I'm gonna drop the link here for everyone in the chat. check it out. If you had a question that we weren't able to answer today, please ask it in the Republic campaign. There you go. Well, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us here today.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
See you next time.